All right, Kathy, you ready?
I think so. Can you hear me?
Yep, sounds great.
Awesome. Good afternoon, everyone. I had the pleasure of attending one of Jeff Ment's breakout seminars at Cruise World this past November. He certainly was not given nearly enough time to cover everything there is to know about legal issues in travel. But in that short amount of time, I learned an incredible amount. He and his team are amazing, and I'm sure confident that you guys are going to come out of this webinar the same way I did out of his breakout session. So, without further ado, Mr. Jeff Ment.
Okay, hello, Kathy. Thank you. Nicole, thank you for having me. I am chilly today because it's unfortunately only like 40 degrees in Connecticut on a spring day, but I'm in Westport, Connecticut. Going to talk to you for a while about how to protect yourself and how to do this business as best as possible. I've been in this business for most of my life in one form or fashion. I started really young at my mom's travel agency at the age of 14. And I think my first jobs were filing brochures, answering the phone, learning Sabre, teaching other people Sabre, working for other travel agencies. That led to a job with a then existing airline, Eastern Airlines, followed by Eastern's demise in 91. I went to work for Continental Airlines. I finished law school in 92, and I've been practicing law since 92, which is a really long time ago. Since I don't know all of your ages, it's fair to say it's could be longer than some of you have been alive. And my clients are travel advisors, travel agencies, host agencies, networks, consortia, trade groups, tour operators, tech companies in travel, people, suppliers, vendors, airlines, hotels, cruise lines. So I feel like I come with enough experience to be able to do this talk to you all about how to protect yourself as a travel advisor. You're all hosted, you're all part of this group, you all should have a general idea of what you're doing, but the goal today is to give you a few pieces of information that you can kind of work with in the back of your mind to think about how to protect your business. We're going to talk about what documents are pretty important to have. We're going to talk about how supplier selection is the one weak link in the chain, and that's how you can get yourself into trouble by who you pick to do business with. We're going to talk about what terms and conditions means and what you can do to best protect yourself. That doesn't mean copying somebody else's and hoping for the best. We're going to talk about errors in omission insurance and what you should do when you're out looking to buy that and what you should be thinking about. It's not always driven by price. You should think about other considerations as well. We're going to talk about updates in the world about travel law and things that you should be thinking about. I think, however, we're going to really cover how to protect you. That's what it's really all about. And there's really three things, if we were to pick like an overarching theme, we would say there's three things you need to do to protect yourself. You need to have, hopefully, a business entity, like a limited liability company or a corporation. You know, anybody can open a corporation. It doesn't have to be hundreds of people with millions of dollars. Anybody can open an S Corp. Anybody can open an LLC. Working without either of those creates the risk of liability to your own personal assets. If you have none, you may not care. If you have some, you should care. So when you are a travel advisor, you can be a sole proprietor. For instance, Jeff could be a travel advisor and not have a business surrounding me. Or I could be Jeff's Travel LLC. Or I could be Jeff's Travel, comma, Inc. If I were one of those last two, my personal assets would be protected. If I'm just Jeff's Travel, my personal assets are at risk. And if I have any other businesses, because some of you do this as a second job or a third job, and some of you do it as a first job. But if you have other stuff going on in your life, you don't want the silos to be mixed together. You want to have them really separate. So you want travel to be its own bucket. You might do something else. I talked to a woman this morning that's a PA, a physician's assistant. I talked to a guy yesterday that has another business involving like behavioral mental health. So you want to be careful not to mush together. That's a legal word, mush together. You want to be careful not to mush together your various businesses or your personal assets because there is risk in what we do. We cannot get rid of the risk. We can only make it as low as possible or as practicable, and we can't get rid of it. So if you're sitting here today and you're a sole proprietor and you can multitask, you can probably go online to your Secretary of State website, search for a business name, and set up an LLC to protect yourself. That might be the best 20 minutes you spend today doing something that will help your business work as efficiently as possible in the risk category. The second thing your businesses should all have are the right pieces of paper to back you up. And that's the essential documents. Essential documents usually are three categories: terms and conditions. Everybody kind of knows what that means. Terms of use. Some people know what that means. Privacy policy. Most of you think you know what that means. So these are all words that are thrown around all the time by people, by companies, and we're going to kind of dive into those three and talk about what they are. So you should have all three of those things. You should be a business entity. And lastly, you should have errors and omission insurance. And so since it's not provided by your host agency, that allows you to go out there and buy your own E&O policy. And that's going to be sort of the last part of our talk. But these are really three important areas that I feel that if you do a good job in these three areas, you are going to be okay. Okay, now we're going to start to peel the onion and go a little bit deeper into each category. Terms of use, terms and conditions, privacy policy. Terms of use. We all, we see these things every day. We don't spend a lot of time looking at them. Terms of use are important if you have a website. If you do not have a website and you are living in the dark ages, you do not need to worry about terms of use. So you can kind of tune me out if you have no website. If you have a website, you should listen and you should understand that terms of use protect you. They protect you against people misusing your website. They prevent you from incurring liability for actions taken by other people who access and improperly use your website. It can protect your copyright and trademark, which is another category we can talk about. But if you have a website that people can come onto and gather information and communicate with you by contacting you, by posting something, by putting up pictures in your blog, if you have a website that allows people to make reservations and give you confidential, protected information, you should be having something called terms of use. It would basically put the onus on the other person to abide by the law and the rules of your website so that you're protected against anything that they might do. Privacy policy, everybody kind of gets the idea that you get personal protected information in booking travel. In fact, you get a lot of it. You know people's birth dates, you know their addresses, you know their passport numbers, you know their credit card, you know their health issues. So you're learning a lot of information about people. And having a privacy policy protects you from liability associated with the information you obtain from people who use your website or your business. There are certain states, in particular California, and some others growing in popularity. There are some other states that have heightened privacy laws that we need to take into account when we help you. I think, although I don't have a really scientific chart, I think we have clients in every state. I might be missing some place here or there, but we stay on top of what the laws are around the country to be able to help you. If you do business with people in Europe, that's different than sending people to Europe. But if you do business with people from Europe, you have to actually comply with their laws, even though you're here. So for travel advisors who tell me we do business with people here and there, we then have to have a conversation about the GDPR. Four letters that most of you have heard of, and you have a general idea, but it's an enhanced, heightened privacy policy, and it's applicable to people who are citizens of a European Union country or the United Kingdom. And that would include somebody who lives in Kentucky, but also happens to have dual citizenship in France. That person's entitled to privacy protection. The reason it's important is if you are doing direct marketing or soliciting to these people, you just can't do it to Europeans. I know you think like that would be good for all of us to be protected, because who on the call here hasn't been bombarded by people bothering us to solicit something or sell something? It doesn't work that way in the EU. Those folks have a heightened level of protection. So everybody needs a privacy policy. What your privacy policy says might be a little different depending on who you do business with and where you are. The thing I need to kind of disavow you of is these are all similar looking things, but one size does not fit all. So terms of use, terms and conditions particularly, and privacy policies, they're not just one size fits all where you can like buy them online or steal them from a friend or go on a competitor's website. The devil's in the details. So when you just hope for the best and copy something or buy something without really fully understanding it, you might be completely fine. You may never have a problem with that. Or you may have a problem on the second day and wish you had done a better job picking out what you're doing. Nobody really likes to spend money on this stuff. I mean, you want to make money. You're not loving the idea of spending money. And you're not loving the idea of having these conversations with people. But you don't love going to the dentist, and you don't love going to the doctor. My wife in particular hears that. She's a gynecologist, obstetrician. People don't really like going to see her sometimes, but they go They go to the dentist, and it's the same thing for your business. Why wouldn't you take care of your business the same way you take care of your body? So these are things that you should kind of be thinking of as you're sitting here and thinking, God, I haven't looked into this stuff in a really long time. What are terms and conditions? Terms and conditions is a contract between you and your customer. Every customer you have today is your friend and your potential litigant next week if something goes wrong. Because, for better or worse, we're in a pretty litigious world here in the United States. Lawsuits pop up for no reason, sometimes for good reason, and thankfully gives lawyers something to do. Because when Shakespeare said, let's kill all the lawyers, thankfully that didn't happen. And so we are out there doing hopefully good, but there are some of us who look for opportunities to sue people without the best motivation. And so your terms and conditions will be your contract that will be front and center in the event of a dispute. Here's a list of things we see. You take somebody else's, you chop them up into different separate documents because you think it's too long and people won't read them. So instead of one document that's 12 pages, you make 6 documents that are 2 pages each. I mean, it's just not a great idea. Next thing is you have them, but you don't show them to anybody. Not a great strategy either. Some of you say, well, I don't want to put it on my website because I don't want my competitors to see. We don't really care about the competitors. We care about the customers, and we care about the word conspicuous, which is the word that the judge is always going to fall back on to decide if your terms and conditions were conspicuously displayed. If they aren't displayed at all, then they can't be conspicuously displayed. You want to make them shorter. We can make the font smaller. That might make it shorter. We can make the margins less. We can do all kinds of tricks to make them look shorter, but we got to keep the important stuff in there. That's like saying, I don't like all my body organs, take out a couple. Well, which one are you going to take out? You might need that one in a week and you might not even know it. Another story, my host agency has terms and conditions. I just use theirs. Great, but theirs protects them, not you. So who cares? It's got to add you. And then, of course, having none. I don't need them. I know all my customers. I love that line. Yes, you do. You do know your customers, and they will know how to sue you when something goes bonkers and they're unhappy. So if you fall into any of these categories or traps, like shake yourself off, take a cold shower, wake up tomorrow and do something different. This is not a good strategy for success. Maybe none of you fall into any of these and you're all exemplary, outstanding citizens. Great. We thank you for doing the right thing. Okay. Why is it important to have your own terms and conditions and not your friends? These are some other reasons. Your terms and conditions fit you. You might have a planning fee. You might have a cancellation fee. You might not. You might, in addition to being a travel advisor, you might book groups. You might go with some of your groups. You might be kind of a mini tour operator because the world outside of travel advisors and tour operators, they don't see much distinction between those two phrases, tour operator and travel advisor. So some of you are actually both. You may not want to think about it or admit it, but if somebody comes to you and says, hey, me and multi-generational family want to go on a family trip to Africa, and you put together a trip, an FIT, or you plan your own safari for them, and you put together pieces like hotels or safaris or bushwalks or airplanes. That's what a tour operator does. So you might be kind of both. So if you are wearing two hats at different times, your terms and conditions should fit that. Your terms and conditions should be yours. That doesn't mean that your host has to have the same thing, and you might be different. You should, for instance, consider whether or not you want to have an arbitration provision or a litigation provision. I'll give you lots of reasons it should be litigation, not arbitration. Starting with there's no appeal, for one. Going over to the fact that you can't add any other responsible parties to an arbitration, but you could to a litigation. So you can think about that. You might be in a state that doesn't allow waivers. Why would you want that to be the jurisdiction that you select for lawsuits? It's crummy law. So don't pick a place with crappy law that's going to be self-destructive. But you got to talk to somebody to know these things. And here in the US, there's about 10 to 12 people like me that do this work every day. And those are the people you should be talking to. You may not like me. You may not think I'm funny. You may think I'm a jerk. But use somebody else that does this thing all the time. Don't just call your local lawyer and say you need a set of travel terms and conditions. You're going to pay too much money and you may not get the right thing because that person's got to go out and figure out what to do. Whereas if you talk to somebody that does this every day and can recite the terms in our sleep, which is unusual, that's the kind of person you want to talk to. Your terms and conditions should say if you charge fees, planning, cancellation, rebooking, pain in the ass, that's a separate category because some of your clients are pains in the ass. You should charge them. You should have maybe a fee for doing group booking arrangements. And in the world you people are in, destination wedding planning, it is ripe with disaster when the people don't get married. Now what? Are these other poor people going to Antigua to what was a wedding but now isn't? Are they stuck? If the wedding's canceled at the last minute, do the people get their money back? They're going to think they do. I swear to God, they're going to think that they get a refund if the wedding's canceled because that's the purpose of their trip. And if the purpose has been defeated, then somebody should pay them their money back. Is that going to be you? Is it going to be sandals? Is it going to be classic vacation? Probably not. They probably don't get their money back. But I have been involved in these stories with lawsuits, with claims, with arguments, with nasty emails, with bad social media posts where they make you out to be the sinner who's stealing the money. Yet the people that they wanted to go see get married aren't. What about attrition? What about the bride and groom that come to you and say, we're going to have 100 people. Let's get 50 rooms. 10 rooms are signed up. Now what? Did you talk about attrition? Do they know what the word attrition means? Do they know what room drop means? Do they know any of these things? The answer is no, they don't. But if they don't, and you don't tell them, that's your problem. The goal here is to make it so that you don't have problems. You can only not have problems if you do it right from the outset. You should have a group booking agreement. You should have an agreement with the bride and groom. Hold them responsible if they don't get married. Why is it your problem when everybody's mad at you that they want their money back? Put it in writing from the beginning so that there's no confusion about it. I don't know. This is like some kind of weird little cartoon about legal drafting. Um, Never choose simple words where complex ones will prove reasonably practicable. Never use one double negative where no triple negative will not prove unnecessary. I know it's kind of funny. It's like kind of true too. We write in a different way. So when you say to us, "Can you make this less legal sounding?" I just look at you. I'm the lawyer. I don't know. Like, what should I make it sound like? Can you make it sound better? I don't know. Like, no, I can't make it sound better. Can you make it friendlier? I guess. So for the yoga people, we use namaste. We feel like we put that in your terms and conditions. It's a more peaceful, mindful moment where your customer will feel the love that you are trying to give them. Then we tell them you're not responsible for anything. If you're planning a wellness trip, we say that you may not get well. You may come home worse. You may be worse off. Your opportunities for yoga and mindfulness and meditation and blah, 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 Ayurvedic dining may all suck. But you got to say these things because people believe that the best is going to happen. If you do medical tourism, another great big area, it may not work. The surgery may be a disaster. The hair replacement, which I never got, may fall out. The tummy tuck may be bad. We are travel people. We are not doctors. We are not medical people. But you got to put that in your terms and conditions if that's the area that you are selling travel in. If you're tired of listening, I suppose you could, tune me out, turn me off, or go away. But hopefully you're getting like at least one piece of useful information. Your terms and conditions, they gotta have waivers and disclaimers. That's the meat that protects you from attack. See the people? They are attacking the guy. And this is where you're going to protect yourself. I've seen so many lawsuits. The first thing I say to the client or the insurance company, can I see the terms and conditions? Yeah, there's a great set. Okay, great. I know I'm going to win. Oh, we don't have any. I become worried. So this is an area that you can like help yourself. This is just kind of like what waivers need to have or what they need to say, but they are legally binding documents or parts of your bigger document where the traveler accepts risk and agrees to waive your liability for damages that happen on their trip. The adage, bad things happen to good people on vacation, rings true very frequently. You just have to read the newspaper. Well, nobody reads newspapers. That's like dating myself. Look online. Submarines sink in Africa. People get eaten by hippopotamuses. I'm sorry, the submarine sank in Egypt. People get eaten by hippopotamuses in Africa. People fall, people die, people have problems, people get attacked, people get drugged, raped. All crazy things happen on trips. The Caribbean. You got to love the Caribbean. You got to love all inclusive resorts. But there's risk and danger. I mean, I shouldn't need to say that Mexico, in a category all by itself, has plenty of risk and danger. Just look at the travel agent, a friend of mine who got sued in Texas because her client died in Cancun and then came back and blamed her for sending them to Cancun when they walked into her agency and said, "We want to go to Cancun." So how possibly could it be her fault for sending people to Cancun who wanted to go to Cancun and the guy who got killed in Cancun? That case is still going on in Texas. The guy's name was Elijah Snow. It was a lovely guy, firefighter from Texas, probably a guy everybody would want to be friends with. We don't know why he died. We don't know who killed him. But we do know it shouldn't be the travel advisor's fault that Elijah Snow, while wildly intoxicated, got killed. But she still finds herself on the wrong end of the lawsuit. She's got great terms and conditions. She's got great liability waiver. That's what's going to see her through. That's why she can sleep at night, because this ridiculous lawsuit is definitely nerve-wracking if you're her. So, okay, let's see. What else does this thing say? The limitation of liability insulates the company from civil damages that the traveler suffers from these losses. Should be incorporated into your terms and conditions. I mean, listen, folks, if you don't have this, you're in the wrong business, because if you don't realize the risk that could befall you, you're doing something wrong. Waivers talk about inherent risk, assumption of risk. They have the actual release language like, I agree to never sue you, and this is binding on my heirs, assignees, representatives, because you want it to like be all encompassing. You want it to survive the time period of the trip so that 2 years from now they can't sue you. And you want to have indemnification. Indemnification, legal word, means to protect you for a claim made against you for somebody else's negligence. Okay, you might say, what's a good example of that? Well, thanks for asking that great question. Let's say you're a travel advisor and you send a bunch of people to a hotel in the Caribbean for a wedding, and a drunk guest damages the hotel property. Anybody been in that boat before? Well, if you're in that boat and the hotel contract was with you or your agency, they might blame you. They might say, we don't really know exactly who did it, but it was somebody in your wedding group, so you hold the bag. That doesn't feel good. Indemnification means you can go blame the wrongdoer for your troubles and get your money back if you had to pay any money, or you can get them to just take over the claim and be responsible for fixing the mess that they created, not you. That's why indemnification is a really important word that people don't really use too often in regular conversation, because nobody says the word indemnification at a cocktail party. But when you talk to somebody like me wearing a tie, sitting at a desk, indemnity is a pretty common word. So you want to have it, particularly with these wedding groups. I know you love the wedding groups. That's what you do. Wedding groups, romance. It's exciting and new. It also can be a disaster. So I'm not trying to dissuade you from doing this good work. I'm just trying to keep you from falling into a trap that is just a few feet away, but you can walk around it or you can fall into it. I do need a few people to fall into the trap, because that makes my job actually more interesting and gives me stuff to do. But please, I don't need all of you to fall into the trap. COVID-19 waiver and booking terms is still out there, guys. The world has never been the same since 2020. Connecticut, by the way, one of the first places to be struck down by the pandemic. My little town of Westport, Connecticut, somehow was thrust into the spotlight of national news because some guy from South Africa got the virus, came to Westport, went to a party, and like wiped out the town like on March 7th, 2020, including my wife, who was taking care of some of these people and struck down as one of those first responder doctor people. So we got to live it firsthand. A terrible experience. You don't need this front and center in your terms and conditions anymore. It doesn't need flashing lights, but it should still be tucked away nicely to protect you. Force majeure. Everybody practice. Force majeure. French. For. It's not my fault that something terrible has happened, so don't blame me. I think that's what you need to know. Let's say you had a guest who traveled to the Dominican Republic the other day and went to a concert and the roof collapsed and they died. That's not foreseeable for you. So you shouldn't be blamed for things that you can't control. So your terms and conditions need to have these two French words, force majeure. You can call them the Americanized version of unforeseeable events. Force majeure sounds a little spiffier and shows your international flair. So you probably want to go with force majeure. I had a court case in New Hampshire. It was me versus, some other lawyer. And I was talking about force majeure for this travel contract and COVID and trying to get the contract canceled. I knew I was going to win when the lawyer kept calling it force majeure. I swear to God, the first time the guy said force majeure, I thought, there's no way. There's no way. This guy cannot win this case talking about force majeure. And thank God, it's all in the presentation. You can look all spiffy with a nice suit and a fancy tie, but as soon as those words force majeure come out of your mouth, the air is taken from your sail and you begin to not move forward. I know you're thinking this isn't as boring as I thought it might be. If you haven't met a chargeback yet, thank your lucky stars. On the other hand, if you've fallen victim to the awful attack of these idiot customers filing a chargeback, you know darn well that this needs to be in your terms and conditions, because chargebacks are when the people are mad and they want their money back and they file a chargeback with their credit card and they say, I need my money back because I was going to a destination wedding, but now the service isn't going to be provided because there's not going to be a wedding because my moron friends broke up and called off the wedding. That's a chargeback. Well, okay, but they fail to realize that it is your pocket that the money may be sucked out of through this process, because I know they pay the supplier. I've been doing this long enough. That's how it usually works. They pay the supplier. Supplier's the merchant of record. Chargeback is filed. Merchant of record has to fight it. They might not do a great job. They might miss the deadline. Then they lose the money. Then they send the agency a recall, commission, and processing notice or a debit memo. And they want the money back from the travel company. And then the travel company says, oh, that was Jeff's clients. We're going to give the chargeback notice to Jeff, and he's going to have to pay the chargeback. Well, are you kidding me? Like, no trip, no commission, and now you want me to reimburse these losers who think that they can use a chargeback to get their money back? You got to explain to people the chargeback hurts you, not some big mysterious bank in the sky, not some giant company like Apple Leisure Group or its Classic Vacations, because those guys are great selling. They love you. They love your business. You're going to be the top of the top. You're going to go on fam trips. You're going to have overrides, co-op advertising, marketing money, shrink wrap your car. When the shit hits the fan and there's a giant chargeback, they are marching right into your office and demanding that you give them the money back. That does not feel good. So you got to be ready to help them fight the chargeback because they don't have any client contact. You do. So they don't know what your terms and conditions say. They don't know if you had a signed credit card authorization because you give them the credit card number, but without all this other stuff. And then the chargeback comes. And then you get a notice. We got a chargeback. Do you have any information to fight it? Don't sleep on your rights to contest the chargeback. You want to have a waiver in your terms and conditions that says you can sue your customer if they do an improper chargeback. I know it doesn't sound friendly. I know it sounds pretty rough, but I also know that we use it more times than you would possibly think to go after these scoundrels who do a chargeback and it ends up hurting you, the little guy. You are only as good as your supplier. I don't know how else to say it. You are only as good as your supplier. If your supplier craps out on you and does a crummy job, you are going to be blamed. So you want to have a provision that you are not responsible for the supplier's actions or its negligence. What's your relationship to the supplier? Well, you don't run the hotel. Anybody watch White Lotus? I know 6 million people watched it on Sunday night. I felt bad that Chelsea got killed. I thought she would live, but she did not. Rick just let her bleed out right there on the dock. But then he got killed. So, anyways, you don't work for the hotel, the bus company, the airplane, any of these things. So you want to draw the distinction between you and them, but you are the one who picks the people that you're working with. So are you vetting your suppliers well enough? What does that mean? Well, thanks for asking. It doesn't mean who pays the highest commission is where you book. That is not good vendor vetting. Better vendor vetting is getting recommendations about suppliers, getting recommendations about venue, getting recommendations about motor coach companies. If you are dealing with a destination that you do not know like the back of your hand, talk to somebody who does. Yes, it's exciting and special to go sell a new destination. But if you haven't been there, do your due diligence. Pick the right people. We can't control or predict everything, but we can protect ourselves with these kinds of provisions in your terms and conditions. And lastly, when recommending a certain excursion or tour operator, provide the link to their terms and conditions so that you can be protected from whatever in their terms and conditions. So that'll help you. All right, speeding along, we already talked about indemnification, so we're not going to talk about it again. But here's an example of an indemnification. The traveler agrees to indemnify the travel agent for any bad stuff that happens on the trip. So you're getting indemnified for any breach or violation of the agreement, the contract, the terms and conditions, and you're getting indemnified for any damage caused by these idiots who go on trips and forget all common sense and good manners. Not you, I know you guys are great, but I've seen some fam trips go bonkers. These are other things we've kind of talked about some of these things. Yeah, I mean, you can put in there a non-disparagement provision that says you can't ever write anything bad about me online. Yes, that is stomping on their First Amendment rights. If you are a constitutional lover, you might not want to put that in. But these are things that you can put in there. You can put in there that if you have to sue me, you cannot do it as a class action. You can only sue me individually. Okay, rounding the final turn here to talk about errors and omission insurance. You need it. You got to have it. They aren't all the same. If some of you have been hosted by agencies that provide it, that's great. If you're not provided E&O insurance, you get to go out into the marketplace and pick your own. You might be thinking, what's my deductible going to be? What's the big amount of money they would pay if something goes wrong? And you might say, well, how much is enough? I don't know. I would say that most agents who run small to medium-sized businesses have no less than $500,000 and typically no more than $2 million. So your sweet spot is somewhere in that range. What does this stuff cover? Great question. It covers travel agency operations. What does that mean? An equally good question. It means providing advice about travel, accommodation, cruises, excursions, or tours, and researching travel-related information via the internet, placing reservations via the internet, and communicating by email in furtherance of travel agency operations. That's what it covers. The better question for your insurance agent is, what does it not cover? You want that category to be as narrow as possible. The insurance company wants it to be as fat as possible. So the pages of exclusions in your E&O policy are longer than the pages of what's covered. And I say that loving these guys because I do a lot of work for them. The two best ones in the country, Berkshire Hathaway or Aon, they specialize in what you do. They know your business like you do. Your insurance will be better if you have it with Berkshire Hathaway or Aon. But it doesn't cover some stuff. It doesn't cover you if you're a shady character ripping off your customers. That's not what insurance is about. It doesn't cover you if you made an intentional mistake and you, I don't know, intended to do something bad. They don't cover intentional misconduct. They don't cover refund disputes. That's a really big one because most of the time when people are mad at you, they're mad about money and they're mad about refunds. And this insurance with either Berkshire Hathaway or Aon doesn't cover refund disputes. Now, a refund dispute can be dressed up in another way sometimes that it will cover it. So I think that there's some workarounds on some of those kinds of arguments about money. But you want to read this. Everybody should go home and read your exclusions on your E&O policy. That sounds miserable, but it will be really worth your time to go do that. Now, as we kind of wrap up here, there are some new laws out there. Some of them apply to you, some of them don't. If you do airline ticketing, you probably don't, but if you do, and you are the merchant of record for an airline ticket, you bear the heavy responsibility of making an airline refund for a cancellation if the airline fails to make the refund. That's pretty crappy because you're you and it's the airline, but the way the law is written, you have an equal responsibility to refund. California, drip pricing and junk fee law. You got to put the whole price right out front, right in the beginning. It can't be, hey, this is the price. And then 4 pages later, oh, that wasn't the price. It's 3 times what that front page says. These laws mean you can't do that. You got to put the price. This is kind of an OTA thing where you see these you see OTAs advertising how low their prices are. They used to be really low, but by the time you checked out, they got really high. Can't do that anymore. Okay, we're gonna do some questions, but wrapping it up, terms and conditions, terms of use, privacy policy, insurance, use a lawyer, use somebody who knows what they're talking about. Travel lawyers do all kinds of nifty things, including these, including sub-agent agreements, including corporate formation, including problem clients, dealing with refunds, dealing with debit memos, dealing with disputes. This is how you can find me at the Ment Law Group. We are a group of 6 lawyers and a bunch of support staff, and we are pretty much devoted to spending all day talking to people like you. So it can be very exciting because travel is very sexy and very alluring, even in the face of the world crumbling about tariffs. People will still travel. Okay. Like my kids often say, stop talking, Dad. So that's kind of the presentation. It seems like most of you have stuck around, so I always think that's interesting. Thank you for sticking around. Some of you might have popped some questions here, so let's see what the story is. Yeah, the raw realism. That's just because I'm old and I've seen a lot. Okay. Yeah, Cruise World, the story about Texas was about a social media post that she had that they used to blame her for the guy dying. Somebody had clients cause $20,000 damage at a wedding. Okay. All right. Do we have to vet suppliers recommended by our consortia? Well, I would ask your consortia, how did they vet the supplier? That's the question you should ask, because you don't have to do your own double vetting, but you should be familiar with what standards they used. Because if you find out that they had no standards and they got an override and they got co-op marketing and they went on 5 fam trips, not the reason to use the supplier. Like, it's got to be deeper than that. Okay. Berkshire Hathaway. Yep, that is a good one. Thank you. Yeah, you're welcome. Okay. I don't know. Nicole, Kathy, that's we're at 2:55. Anybody have anything to add or say?
Hi, Jeff. I actually had a question that has come up a little bit in the past. Could you talk a little bit about why it's a good idea to keep your IATA number private and how it's a liability if you post it, say, on like an email footer or something like that?
Yeah, so IATA numbers, some people have them, some people don't. Don't feel bad if you don't. It's not the end of the world. IATA numbers are used in the US for primarily commission tracking and sale tracking. We call it an IATAN number because it has the letter N at the end of IATA, but it's yours. It's like your Social Security number. So why would you put it out there for the world to know? It doesn't mean anything, but people can take it and try to misuse it. And then if something happens and it was on your IATA number, then they're going to blame you. So it just creates the opportunity for something to go wrong, or somebody's going to claim that they're on your IATA list and they should get discounted trips, and they're going to go off and be a jerk on a fam trip or some discounted cruise agency rate. And it just, no reason to say it. I know you're loud and proud that you have it, but you don't have to tell everybody um, what it is. Okay. As an event planner, I must have a separate travel business LLC. Well, you can have an LLC that has two different DBAs under it. You can be Kimberly's Event Planning. Then you can have Kimberly's Travel Company under one LLC. But depending on how much you're doing, you want to protect your other part of you from any liability that the travel part of you creates. That doesn't mean that you have to have separate LLCs, but it does mean it may not be a bad idea because you don't want the good to ruin the bad. So, an event planner with no travel issues probably has less risk than the travel person doing travel and event planning. So, you can decide you might want to have two separate ones just so one doesn't bleed into the other. I guess that's my example. If you wanted to talk more deeply about your personal issues, just text me or call me. But um, I don't think you have to, but it's definitely worthy of thinking about, just to run it through your minds. Well, I
Thank
don't
you
know.
so much, Jeff.
2:58.
And are there any events that I know you speak a lot within the industry and for a lot of different host agencies and different parts of, ASTA and a few different events. Thank you so much for being with us today. Is there anything coming up that we can see you speak at in the future?
I was just in Las Vegas at Travel Agent Forum. I spoke 3 times for like hours on end. It seemed like a lot, but there were a lot of people listening. I'll be at ASTA, Salt Lake City, speaking there. I think I'm going to be speaking at the Romance Travel, all part of that same Travel Agent Forum. They have the smaller one, which is the Romance Travel. Then they have like an agency owner one. So I think I'll be at both of those. Uh, that's probably enough. I got to do some work in between all this talking stuff because otherwise it's great to talk, but got to do stuff. Okay, Kathy reached out to Kyle. Yep, Kyle's one of the lawyers that works for us. And this is the first month, but we've just started to offer like these flat rates because so many people said, how much do these things cost? So now, I'm not sure if this is going to be the best idea we've had or the worst idea we've had, but if you want to talk to us, you can talk to us about what we charge for these things or how we do these things. The goal is to just make enough to get by, so we're not making a killing off of anybody. It's just to have a lot of you asking us to help you. Thank you so much for having me today. I know your time is super valuable. I guess that's it from here, from Westport, Connecticut.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. We'll have the replay and Jeff's contact information up on the website in about a week. So if you need to reach out to him, we'll have that available for you. Thank you so much again, Jeff, and everyone for attending today. Thank you.
All right, y'all have a good day. Bye-bye.
Bye.